The galaxy's oldest living diplomat had stamped "denied" on 47 species, but the 48th would teach him a lesson he'd never forget, and it wasn't about war. Velkath of the Keth had worn his chair at the Conclave's high table for 2 centuries. The chair was carved from lunar bone, a material so dense it resisted even the ceremonial scribing tools of the Vrath record keepers. It was impractical, a symbol of an era when power meant permanence. Velkath himself was a symbol of that era. His hide was the color of weathered slate, folded into 1,000 creases that deepened when he frowned, which was often. He had seen empires rise and fall on technicalities. He had watched delegations grovel, threaten, and weep. He had, on 47 separate occasions, signed the final rejection that sent a species back to the dark between stars. The doors to the great chamber parted for applicant number 48. Velkath had reviewed the file. He knew the numbers. 31 inhabited worlds, 4 trillion souls, a decentralized government they called the Human Sovereign Office. Their technology was unremarkable. Fusion power, efficient jump drives, decent medical science. Their military was small. Their cultural output, according to the Skethatach, was aggressively sentimental. They had no patron species, no strategic resource, no leverage. They were, by every metric the Conclave used, a Category 3 civilization, eligible to apply, unlikely to be accepted. The humans entered, 2 men, 1 woman. The woman led. Her navy jacket was pressed within an inch of its life, the creases sharp enough to cut. She clutched a folder to her chest like a shield. Ambassador Dara Ven. 3 years of self-taught conclave languages. She spoke 3 of the 7 major dialects with a heavy accent and frequent grammatical errors. She mispronounced every greeting she offered to the council members, but she tried. Velkath noted this. Trying was not nothing. Trying was, in fact, more than most Category 3s managed. Most came armed with lawyers and lobbyists. She came armed with a folder and the courage to be wrong in public. Velkath scribbled in his personal log, a habit he had maintained for 150 years. "They try," he wrote. "It is almost touching." Dara presented humanity's case. Her voice was steady, though her hands trembled slightly against the folder. She spoke of trade lanes humanity had mapped through uncharted regions, of diseases they had contained at the cost of their own colonial budgets, of a standing offer to share atmospheric terraforming data that 3 conclave members had already used without acknowledgement. 11 minutes into her presentation, Delegate Korsh of the Sketh interrupted. "Form 7 Gamma," Korsh said. He was a wide gray creature whose orange sash denoted his status as administrative sub-chair for procedural integrity. "Triplicate, physical copies. Do you have them?" Dara paused. "We submitted digital copies 6 days ago." "The filing window. The physical deadline passed 6 days ago," Korsh said. "The digital copies are not valid without the physical counterparts." "Procedure is clear." The chamber fell silent. This was a killing blow. Every species knew it. Velkath had seen it happen a dozen times. A minor form, an overlooked deadline, and the application died in committee before it ever reached a vote. Most ambassadors would have protested, would have demanded an extension, would have wept or raged. Dara Ven did none of these things. She paused. She looked at Korsh, and then she smiled. A real smile, not the desperate grimace of someone trying to salvage a disaster, but the calm expression of someone who had already accepted the outcome and was planning her next move. "We'll resubmit," she said. She closed her folder. She bowed to the council. She walked out of the chamber without looking back. Velkath watched her go. He wrote another line in his log. "She will either break or become a problem. I cannot tell which yet." 4 months later, the humans returned. The same 3 delegates, though the woman looked thinner, her jacket slightly looser at the shoulders. She carried a crate this time, not a folder. Physical copies of Form 7 Gamma. triplicate. She placed them on the submission desk with a soft thud. Velkath's assistant counted them. All present, all correctly formatted. Also included were 6 forms. Era had not been asked to provide forms that Korsh had intended to demand at the next hearing. Forms that would have triggered another delay. She had anticipated him. She had studied the procedural code so thoroughly that she knew what he would ask for before he asked it. And she had translated every single form into Korsh's administrative script, a language so arcane and detail-obsessed that most species required 3 years of intensive study to master it. She had done it in 4 months, alone, without a teacher. Korsh stared at the forms for a long moment. His orange sash seemed to dim. He said nothing. He asked about Form 12 Delta instead. Dara nodded. "We'll prepare it." 2 weeks later, she submitted Form 12 Delta, then the Annex, then the Census Certification, which required a complete audit of every human world's population, economy, and resource allocation. The wrath meticulous to a spiritual fault, a species that considered paperwork a form of prayer audited every human world. 14 months after her first entrance into the chamber, Dara Ven placed the complete package on Velkath's desk. 4,200 pages. Every form, every signature, every certification. All correct. All on time. Velkath held the package in his hands. He could feel the weight of it, not just the paper, but the labor. The sleepless nights, the translated languages, the audited worlds. The smile that had not wavered. He sent the package to the review committee. The committee met once a year. They had already met for that cycle. The next meeting was 11 months away. He sent Dara the notification. Procedure did not care about feelings. But he added a private note to her file, a note no one else would ever read. If not for the rules, they would be approved. Most ambassadors, faced with an 11-month wait, would have gone home. They would have sent updates via secure channel, would have hired local representatives to monitor the committee's progress. Dara Ven did not go home. She rented a modest embassy on the lower ring of the conclave station, overpriced, underfurnished, with a leak in the main corridor that no one had fixed in 30 years. She knew she was being overcharged. She paid anyway, and she attended every open session of the conclave, every debate, every procedural hearing, every interminable discussion of trade tariffs and boundary disputes. She sat in the gallery, alone, taking notes. She learned names, not just the names of delegates, but the names of their families, their home worlds, their favorite foods. She sent handwritten notes of congratulations when a delegate's child hatched or graduated or received an award. She sent condolences when a delegate's elder passed. She did not do this as manipulation. Velkath watched her closely, looking for the tell, the calculation behind the kindness. He found none. She was simply interested. She wanted to know the people who held her species' future in their hands. She wanted to understand them. Patience isn't passivity, she wrote in her personal journal, a document that would later become famous. It's practice. The committee tabled the application. 1 to 3 years, they said. Standard for Category 3 species. Velkath delivered the news himself, standing in the doorway of her small embassy. The leak in the corridor had never been fixed. Water dripped onto the floor behind him. She poured him something called coffee, a dark, bitter liquid that tasted like regret and burned his throat. He drank it anyway. She asked if he wanted data on an enzyme plague in Sketh territory. She had obtained it through open channels, had correlated it with human medical research, had identified a potential treatment pathway. "That is not your problem," he said. "The people dying are," she replied. He took the data. He passed it to the relevant committee anonymously. The plague was contained within 6 months. No one thanked humanity. No one even knew. Velkath wrote in his log, "They give anyway. Is this wisdom or damage?" 2 more years passed. The committee added new requirements to the membership code, a practice that became suspiciously common every time humanity's application came up for review. Form 31 Theta required territorial maps, cosigned by every neighboring species within 2 jump sectors. For most applicants, this meant 2 or 3 signatures. For humanity, it meant 7 neighboring species, 3 of whom were in active territorial disputes with each other. The requirement was functionally impossible. Dara Ven read it. She nodded. She went to work. 11 months of negotiations. Humanity brokered peace between 2 of the warring species, not because the conclave asked them to, but because peace made the maps easier to sign. They offered trade concessions. They shared terraforming data. They sent doctors to treat civilian casualties on both sides of the conflict. They asked for nothing in return except a signature on a map. 11 months. All 7 signatures obtained. The vote came. 11 years after Dara Ven's first step into the conclave chamber, the chamber was full. That never happened. Delegates who had not attended a session in decades made the journey. The gallery, usually empty except for Dara and her rotating team of assistants, was packed with observers from a dozen species. Dara wore the same navy jacket, a small pin on her lapel, a yellow star on a green field, her country's flag, the flag of a nation that had not existed when she was born, that had risen from the ashes of climate wars and resource conflicts, that represented not a government but an idea. She stood very still. Her hands were clasped in front of her. Her face was calm. Velkath voted last. He looked at her, hands in lap. Very still. He looked at the tally. 9 against, 2 abstain, 0 in favor. He had voted to abstain. He could have moved 2 junior Keth delegates, could have pressured them to vote in favor. He chose not to. The political cost would have been too high. He told himself it was pragmatism. He did not believe it. Dara stood in the corridor afterward, not crying, just standing, looking at the wall. The same wall she had looked at 11 years ago, after her first rejection. Velkath found himself walking toward her. He did not know why. "Are you well?" he asked. She turned. Something crossed her face. Not sadness, not anger, not despair. Something older, something that looked like recognition. Then it was gone. "We're used to it," she said. No bitterness, no edge, like weather, like a fact. He thought about those 3 words for a very long time. He thought about them as he walked back to his quarters. He thought about them as he reviewed the next day's agenda, which included a routine approval for the breath, a small species from the second arm who had applied 6 weeks ago and would be voted in before the end of the month. He thought about them as he signed the breath's approval himself. 8 weeks. From application to membership, the humans had been waiting 11 years. They would wait longer. "We're used to it," Dara had said. He wrote the words in his log. Below them, he added, "I do not think this means what she thinks it means." Or perhaps it means exactly that. "We're used to it" is not surrender. It is a receipt. Dara Ven served 9 more years as humanity's primary ambassador. She watched the conclave add 17 new requirements to the membership code, each one specifically designed to slow or stop her species application. She met every one. She learned 2 more languages. She filed every form in triplicate, then quadruplicate when the rules changed mid-cycle. She sat in the gallery and thanked the conclave for its time, for its consideration, for the opportunity to be considered at all. She never raised her voice. She never made a threat. She simply did the work. When her health began to fail a degenerative condition that human medicine could treat, but not cure, she trained her successor. Leon Chuku, a former trade negotiator with a voice like gravel and the patience of a glacier. He took over the embassy with the same quiet determination. He filed the forms. He learned the languages. He sat in the gallery. He thanked the conclave for its time. Leon served 12 years. then Priya Nair, then Raphael said. Each ambassador added their own pages to the growing file. Each learned the new requirements as they appeared. Each watched smaller, less capable species it approved in months, while humanity's application remained under consideration for decades. 67 years, 4 ambassadors. New requirements added to the membership code each time, right after humanity's application came up for review. Humanity met every one. During those decades, they built. They extended trade lanes through unclaimed space, lanes that every other species used without paying maintenance fees. They upgraded relay stations along the Iridian corridor, stations that the Sketh controlled, but the humans maintained. They contained 2 more disease outbreaks in territories not their own, sending medical ships and supplies at their own expense. They paid their station fees on time, every time, even when the fees were raised specifically to price them out. They did not complain. They did not demand recognition. They simply did the work. And they kept the ledger. It started with Dara, a single document, unclassified, stored on a human diplomatic server. The first entry was handwritten, scanned, and uploaded. Form 7 Gamma. Triplicate physical copies required after digital submission. Cost of printing and shipping, 14,000 credits. Time lost, 4 months. The second entry, territorial map requirement, Form 31 Theta. 7 signatures required despite only 3 neighboring species. Time lost, 11 months. Peace brokered at no cost to Conclave. No acknowledgement. The third entry, levy on Iridian corridor transits. Paid annually despite ownership dispute. Total paid to date, 47 million credits. Challenge pending for 9 years. Each ambassador added to the ledger. Leon documented the 17 new requirements. Priya tracked the rising fees. Raphael cataloged the delays, the dismissals, the casual cruelties of a bureaucracy that had decided without ever saying so aloud that humanity would never be allowed in. The ledger grew. 4,000 pages. Every stolen corridor. Every delayed petition. Every added form. Every disease contained without thanks. Every time a human official was moved aside like furniture, touched without permission, spoken to as if they were not there. The cover page, added by Dara in her final year, contained 3 words in small, calm type. For when we're ready. The galaxy did not know about the ledger. The Conclave did not know. Velkath did not know. He had retired from the high table, taking a position as an emeritus advisor. He watched from the upper gallery now, his joints too stiff for the stairs. He watched the humans file their forms. He watched them sit in the gallery. He watched them thank the Conclave for its time. He thought of Dara, of the yellow star, of the words she had spoken in the corridor. We're used to it. He opened her original application, all 4,200 pages of it, and read the cover letter again. The people of Earth request, with respect and good faith, the opportunity to contribute. No threats, no posturing, no promises of what they would do if denied. Just a request. He thought about the breath, approved in 8 weeks. About the Jetheri, approved in 4 months. About the Tessari, who were still waiting after 30 years, but would likely be approved soon, because they had a patron species now, a sponsor who had pulled the right strings. He thought, we made a mistake. Patience is not acceptance. He had confused the two. He suspected the galaxy had too. The Iridian corridor smelled like burned metal, though space had no smell. Commander Yosef Idris of the United Earthship Horizon knew this. He had been stationed on the corridor for 3 years, overseeing the relay stations that humanity had built and maintained for 4 decades. The corridor did not belong to humanity. Legally, it was under consideration, part of the ongoing membership review that had somehow never concluded. In practice, it belonged to whoever was biggest. The Sketh were bigger. At 0340 station time, A Sketh administrative vessel pulled alongside the horizon. Gray, wide, designed by committee. An administrator appeared on the main screen. Gray skin, orange sash, eyes that had never looked at a human and seen an equal. She spoke Conclave Standard, the trade language that Dara Ven had taught herself from a book. The corridor levy, the administrator said. 41 transits this quarter. The fee is substantial. We have a challenge pending, Yosef said. 9 years. The ownership dispute. The levy still applies during review, the administrator said. You may continue to challenge. You may also continue to pay. Procedure is clear. Yosef felt the trap close. He had felt it before. Every human official who had ever dealt with the conclave had felt it. The rules were always clear. The rules were always fair. The rules always favored whoever had written them. How many times, he wondered, could one species pay for its own roads? 2 hours later, a boarding team arrived. Auditors. They had the legal right to inspect any vessel using the corridor. They scanned serial numbers, cross-referenced manifests, checked licenses and permits. 4 hours of quiet, methodical work. One auditor, a young Sketh with a scarred eye ridge, needed to pass Petty Officer Lena Vasquez in the corridor. There was space to go around. The auditor did not go around. He did not ask her to move. He put his hand on her arm and moved her, not violently, like moving a chair, like she was an object in his way. Lena did not react. She stepped aside. She looked at the wall. She waited for the auditor to pass. Then she continued to her station. Yosef saw it. He filed it in his memory. A small thing, but splinters fester. That night, Yosef opened the ledger. He had access to it, all human officials did, though few looked at it regularly. It was too painful, too long, too full of small wounds that had never healed. He scrolled through the pages. The first entry, Dara's handwriting. The thousands that followed. He added his own. Sketh auditor. Unnecessary physical contact with Poe Vasquez. No acknowledgement, no apology, no consequence. He paused. Then he added, levy payment for Q3 12 million credits. Challenge still pending. 9 years and counting. He read for 3 hours. He was not angry. Anger was a flare, bright and brief. This was a slow, steady heat. An engine reaching its design temperature. He closed the ledger and sent a message to a secure address. How close? The reply came 7 minutes later. Closer than they think. 3 weeks after that, the Dothrak came to the Seth colony worlds. 14 human settlements. 60 years of farming and mining. Great-grandparents buried in soil that had been terraformed by hand. Rich in velite, a mineral essential for jump drive manufacturing. The Dothrak brought mining ships the size of moons. They did not ask permission. They did not negotiate. They began extracting. The Conclave's position was clear. The Seth system was under consideration. Negotiation had been ongoing for 40 years. The Dothrak paid a small fee into a general reparations fund, a clause they had written themselves when they chaired the resource committee. The fee was symbolic. The velite they extracted was worth 3 billion credits. 200,000 humans lived on those worlds. Their farms were stripped. Their wells were drained. Their dead were dug up by machines that did not know the difference between soil and bone. Humanity filed an emergency petition. The Conclave's Emergency Response Committee would convene in 30 days to discuss whether the situation qualified as an emergency. 30 days. The Dothrak extracted for 31. The committee met. 2 days of discussion. Ruling. Technically legal. Fine. 4 million credits. The velite was worth 3 billion. Yosef read the decision twice. He stood very still. Then he opened the ledger. Seth Colony Worlds, he wrote. 14 settlements. 200,000 humans displaced. Velite extracted. 3 billion credits. Fine. 4 million. No restitution for colonists. No acknowledgement of harm. He paused. Add it to the ledger. Lena Vasquez came to his office that night. She stood in the doorway, her uniform immaculate, her face unreadable. "Commander," she said, "why do they think we will just keep taking this?" He was quiet for a long time. "They saw patience," he said finally. "They called it weakness. Do they know the difference?" "Not yet." She left. He sat in the dark. He thought about the word yet. It meant it had not happened. It also meant it would. Yet is the most dangerous word in the galaxy. The first sign was the leave requests. 340 human ambassadors, consuls, and diplomatic attaches across every conclave station and member world filed simultaneously. Within an 8-minute window, a junior clerk named Oath, of Roth whose species considered pattern recognition a sacred duty, noticed the anomaly. She flagged it for her supervisor. Her supervisor said it was coincidence. Oath was not convinced. She flagged it anyway, sending a quiet alert to the Conclave's Administrative Oversight Committee. The committee, which met quarterly, would review the alert in 90 days. By then, it would be too late. Director General Amara Solano sat at a small desk on Earth. The city around her was being rebuilt not from war, not from disaster, but simply because humans kept deciding they could do better. Old buildings came down, new ones went up. The air smelled of construction dust and blooming jasmine. Amara signed documents for 6 months. Documents with names like Infrastructure Transfer Protocol, Iridian Corridor, and Voluntary Resettlement Plan, SETH System, and Emergency Medical Withdrawal, SCEF Territory. No drama, just signatures. Each document had been prepared years in advance, reviewed by dozens of legal experts, filed in the correct format with the appropriate conclave offices. Everything was correct. Everything was on time. Everything was, by the letter of the law, perfectly legal. The colonists on the Seth worlds received their resettlement notifications in phases. Phase 1, voluntary relocation to newly established habitats in unclaimed space. Phase 2, transport and housing provided at no cost. Phase 3, final confirmation, signed by each family, acknowledging that they were leaving of their own free will. Nobody goes without what they need, the directive read, and nobody goes knowing why yet. The colonists thought it was voluntary. It was. They were not told it was also strategic. The ethics of this kept Amara up some nights. Not enough to stop. She had read the ledger. She had seen the 4,000 pages of small wounds. She knew what was coming. She had known for years. The planning had started before she was born, in Daraven's small embassy on the lower ring. Every human official since had added to it. The time had come to begin. Every document was filed correctly. On time, right format. The Conclave's own rules humanity had learned them better than anyone. What happens, Amara wondered, when the patient student masters the teacher's own rule book? The ambassadors did not make speeches. They did not issue protests. They cleaned their desks. They left polite notes. The human ambassador to the Keth home world played a strategy game with her neighbor of 11 years. 4 hours. Neither mentioned that she was leaving. At the end of the game, she won she had never won before. "Took me a while to figure out your strategy," she said. Her neighbor laughed. He understood later that it meant more than he thought. The relay stations went next, not all at once. Over 3 months. Formal infrastructure transfer requests submitted to the Conclave's Transportation Committee. Full maintenance histories, cross-referenced with original construction contracts. Handover guides in 6 languages, with training modules for replacement crews. Station 7 Gamma, the smallest, transferred without comment. Station 12 Epsilon, a major hub, required 3 levels of approval. All were granted. The original contracts, filed 40 years ago and never read by anyone outside the human diplomatic corps, made maintenance conditional on access. Since the levy dispute on the Iridian corridor was unresolved, the obligation to maintain the stations was void, legally correct, procedurally sound. No appeal. The 8th transfer processed, then the 9th, then 10 through 20 in 1 week. The paperwork had been prepared years in advance. A Sketh official called Amara's office directly. "Is this a negotiating tactic?" he asked. "Regulatory compliance," Amara's assistant replied. "Have a good day." The liaison meant it. Velkath received a file. No sender, no subject line, no identifying marks. Just a data burst, encrypted with a protocol he did not recognize. He almost deleted it. Something stopped him. A memory, perhaps, of a woman in a navy jacket, standing in a corridor, looking at a wall. He opened the file. 4,001 pages. He recognized the format immediately. Quiet, precise, dated. The same format Daraven had used for her original application 67 years ago. He read for 6 hours. He canceled 3 meetings. He had not canceled a meeting in 40 years. The document did not shout. It did not threaten. It did not demand. It just recorded. 200 years of being dismissed, delayed, moved aside, robbed, all in the correct forms, all properly filed, all unresolved, accumulating like interest. He read about Dara's 3rd interruption, the one where Korsh had asked for a form that did not exist, just to watch her search for it. He read about the levy violations, the fees paid for roads humanity had built. He read about the Dothrak extraction, fine 4 million, value taken 3 billion. He read about the breath approval, 8 weeks. He read about the 43 separate occasions when the Conclave had added new requirements to the membership code, each time immediately after humanity's application came up for review. Page 4001. Final entry, dated 6 months ago. One sentence, written in the same calm, precise hand that had opened the document 67 years earlier. "We have been ready for some time. We are beginning now." Velkath sat for a long time. His hands, creased and spotted with age, rested on the edge of his desk. He thought about the first vote. 9 against, 2 abstain, 0 in favor. He had abstained. He could have changed it. He had chosen not to. He thought about the breath, approved in 8 weeks. About the Jetheri, approved in 4 months. About the Tassari, still waiting after 30 years, but likely to be approved soon because they had found their patron. He thought about the woman in the corridor. "We're used to it." He sent an urgent message to the Keth government. "We made a mistake with the humans," he wrote. "Give them what they asked for. Do not table. Do not review. Do not wait. Do it now." His government formed a committee to review his message. Amara Solano walked into the conclave chamber. It was her first time in 3 years. The gallery where humans used to sit, the small section reserved for Category 3 applicants, was empty. It had been empty so long that no one remembered it being otherwise. She was alone. Gray jacket, no folder, no assistance. She stood at the petitioner's podium, a small platform in the center of the vast chamber, and waited. It became very quiet. The delegates, accustomed to noise and motion, gradually stopped talking. They looked at her. She looked back. "I am here to file a notification," she said. She held up 11 pages. Thin, unimpressive. After careful consideration, she paused on those 2 words, letting them hang in the air. "We have found the conclave's framework structurally ineffective. We are moving to a new framework." Delegate Korsh, older now, his orange sash faded, leaned forward. "What framework?" "You will understand contextually." She walked to the submission tray, a simple metal box with a plaque that read, "All submissions reviewed within 60 days." The same plaque had been there for 40 years. She placed the 11 pages in the tray. She turned. Her chair scraped the floor. It was the only sound in the chamber. Someone later said, that was the moment it became real. Not the words. Not the notification. The chair. The small, ordinary sound of a human woman pushing back from a podium and walking away. The doors closed behind her. What followed was not war. It was a silence. And in the silence, things became visible. The Iridian Corridor, 17 relay stations under SCEF control. On paper. In practice, the documentation for those stations was stored in a proprietary human technical language. No translator existed. The software to read it was available from the Human Sovereign Office. Request processing time. Under review. Ships started arriving late. Then later. Then not at all. Markets hiccuped. Prices for jump drive components, dependent on corridor transit, spiked. The SCEF Transportation Committee issued a statement expressing concern. The statement was filed. No action was taken. The breath newly seated, still finding their footing in conclave politics, sent a private message to the Human Sovereign Office. We were small once, the message read. What do you need? The reply came within the hour. Nothing yet. But thank you for asking. Velkath stood in the empty human embassy on the lower ring. The leak in the corridor had finally been fixed, sometime in the years since Daraven had lived there. The rooms were clean. The furniture was aligned. On the counter in the small kitchen, one cup sat upside down, draining. Next to it, a note. Coffee machine in the third cabinet. Settings are labeled. Help yourself. Thank you for the conversations. He thought, we move them like furniture. They left us a note about coffee. He put the note in his pocket. He had 52 messages from human officials, farewell notes, thank yous, small kindnesses. He replied to none of them. He did not know what to say. We thought patience was simple. He wrote in his log that night. We never asked what it looks like when it runs out. The fleet came out of jump at exactly 0600 station time. Jump drives were not surgical instruments. You aimed for a window of volume of space several million kilometers across and hoped your calculations were close enough. The human fleet did not aim for a window. It hit the mark. 4,000 ships, simultaneous, arriving at the same coordinates from different vectors at the same moment. The Dothrak sensor network, one of the most advanced in the galaxy, registered a single pulse, as if every ship had appeared at the same distance from every sensor. The Dothrak tactical analysts ran the numbers 3 times. They concluded the data was corrupted. It was not. Admiral Lena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the UES Meridian. She was a small woman, compact and still, with gray-streaked hair pulled back in a tight knot. She had practiced calm for years. Simulators, real engagements, the endless small crises of command. She had learned that calm was not the absence of fear. Calm was the decision to act despite it. The Dothrak fleet mobilized fast. 1,200 warships, twice humanity's size. They charged, weapons hot, broadcasting violation orders on every frequency. The human fleet did not fire. It opened a single channel. Lena's message was short. We are here, she said. We are aware of your fleet size. Observe what happens next before deciding. The Dothrak commander, a veteran of 3 territorial wars, ordered the charge. His ships accelerated. Their weapons cycled to full power. They had faced larger fleets than this. They had never lost. The human ships held position. They did not evade. They did not raise shields. They waited. Energy pulse, then silence. Human shields absorbed the impact completely. The Dothrak weapons, designed to overwhelm and destroy, splashed against the human defense screens like water against stone. Then human weapons fired. One wave, not explosions. A ripple. Every Dothrak ship in the forward formation stopped, not destroyed. Engines dead. Weapons offline. Life support intact. 300 ships, hanging like stones in the void. The crews were unharmed, confused. Their screens showed power fluctuations they could not explain, systems that had simply stopped. The weapon research had started 41 years ago. In a small human scientific journal, read by no one outside a handful of academic specialists. The principle was simple: a directed energy pulse that disrupted the quantum coherence of jump drive cores, rendering them inert. The Conclave had not read the journal. They had not funded the research. They had not even known it existed. What else, the Dothrak commander wondered, had humanity been building while no one was looking? Lena's second message came 5 minutes later. "We can disable the rest," she said. "We are choosing not to." "We would like to talk." The Dothrak commander talked. The terms were simple: 14 colony worlds, human, not contested, not under review. Restitution for displaced colonists, calculated at fair market value for the Vilite extracted, plus interest at the same rate that Dothrak charge on their own commercial loans. Vilite returned or paid within 90 days. The Dothrak commander stared at the terms. "By what authority?" He asked. "Our own. The Conclave." "The Conclave's review is ongoing," Lena said. "We have decided not to wait." She reactivated their 300 ships, not slowly, not piece by piece, just on. Engines back. Navigation restored. Weapons online. The Dothrak crews sat in their cockpits, blinking at readouts that made no sense. He had not expected that. No one ever expected that powerful and generous in the same breath. Not strategy, just right. He agreed to the terms. The economic effects began the same day. The Iridian corridor, already operating at reduced capacity, went to half. The Sketh had been managing badly for 3 months. Stations dark. Ships waiting. Markets seizing. Delegate Korsh, who had written the original levy clause, had not slept in 3 weeks. He requested access to the proprietary format the humans had used for their infrastructure transfers. The reply came within an hour. Under review. Standard processing time, 60 days. He sent another request. The reply: first request still processing. A second request creates a procedural conflict. Thank you for your patience. He stared at the screen. He was now on the other side of cleanly worded clauses. It was not comfortable. The breath made their move, quietly. Full diplomatic relations with the Human Sovereign Office. Withdrawal from 3 Conclave economic agreements. The Conclave was furious. A Rav delegate expressed strong disapproval on the floor of the chamber. The breath minister listened politely. Then she said, "We remember when we were Category 3. "That is not relevant," the Rav delegate said. "It is to us." Click of a call ending. The moment that changed everything happened in a small conference room, far from the main chamber. Velkath requested the meeting. Amara Solano came alone. No lawyers, no aides, no recording devices. They sat across from each other at a table that had seen centuries of negotiations. Velkath spoke first. "What do you want?" "What we always wanted," Amara said. "A seat at the table? Not anymore? We want to build the next table. If current members want seats, they can ask us. You planned this. We filed it. First petition, 2057, paragraph 9. Alternative frameworks if standard processes prove structurally ineffective. It has been under review for 67 years. You are angry. We were. Around year 80, we moved past anger. Clarity. The weapon. How long? 41 years. You built it while filing forms. Yes. Why not use it sooner? We did not need to. We hoped we would not have to. She asked him one question. If we had been the breath right gifts, right connections, right patron species, would you have approved us in 8 weeks? He did not answer immediately. He sat with Dara in a corridor, with the ledger, with 43 denials, with the memory of a woman who had mispronounced his language because she learned it from a book, alone with no teacher. Yes, he said. She nodded. Thank you for saying that. She left. He sat alone in the conference room. He thought, 200 years. All it would have cost was a seat. What were we protecting? The new conclave had 23 seats. The old one had 13, one of which had been empty for 40 years, reserved for a species that had never been approved. The new table was round. No head, no senior end, no raised platform for the chair. And the rule, written into the founding charter, that no delegation could interrupt another, the OE provision, named for the woman who had been interrupted 3 times on her first day. Her granddaughter attended the inaugural session. She was a doctor, not a diplomat. She wore a small pin on her lapel, a yellow star on a green field, the same pin Dara had worn 67 years ago. She sat in the gallery. The gallery was full now, filled with observers from a dozen species who had come to witness the beginning of something new. She cried quietly. Not sadness. Something finally arriving that took too long. Velkov wrote his memoirs. He was very old now, the oldest living Keth, his joints too stiff for travel, his eyes too dim for small print. He wrote about the 47th species, about a woman who mispronounced his language because she learned it from a book, alone, with no teacher. Almost right. Almost right is what you get, he wrote, when you are trying hard and no one is helping. He wrote, we saw a species that smiled and resubmitted. We called that small. We did not ask what a species that accepts everything for 200 years looks like when it stops accepting. The Dothrak Tribunal took 18 months. Humanity proposed it, funded it, wrote the guidelines, then stepped back. 3 judges, 1 Breath, 1 Keth, 1 Jetheri. The Jetheri were a small, quiet species from the galactic rim. No one had ever asked them to do anything important before. The Jetheri judge said, being asked was the first time we felt like real members. Restitution was paid. Colony worlds were recognized as human. Irrevocably, the ruling said. 7 times? Admiral Lena Vasquez attended the final day. Civilian clothes, gray jacket, no insignia. When the verdict was read, an aide whispered to her, good outcome. It is a start, she said. What comes next? The same thing we always do, carefully, with the paperwork in order. The Sketh corridor fees were paid retroactively. 67 years. Interest calculated at the same rate the Sketh charged on their own commercial loans. The total sum was large enough to restructure 3 Sketh budget lines. Delegate Korsh, long retired, sat in his garden for an hour. He thought about the clause he had written, the procedural elegance. He thought about the humans, filing their forms, paying their fees, smiling and resubmitting. They had been building a case the whole time. The conclave had given them 67 years of evidence. Restitution funds were placed in a colonial development account for smaller species, Category 3s, administered by a committee of humans, Vrath, Jetheri, and 1 member elected by the recipients. No Sketh, no Dothrak. This was not punishment, the charter explained. It was a design decision. The people who had been ignored most were most qualified to decide who needed help. Small species began messaging the Human Sovereign Office. Dozens, then more, then hundreds. Same question, different languages. How did you wait so long without breaking? A young diplomat named Kai Ferrer answered each personally. Long letters, handwritten, in the language of the recipient. He never said, be patient. He said, build, document, know your own value, file everything correctly. Someday the rules will be tools. 1 species the Cesari, small, cold world, 30 years applying, wrote back that his letter had been read aloud in government session. 3 delegates cried. He wrote back, completely understandable. The Tessari were approved in 6 weeks. Velkath reached the last section of his memoirs. He opened the ledger, again 4,001 pages. The final page was not an entry. It was a scan of Daraven's handwritten journal. The night after her third interruption, after Korsh had asked for a form that did not exist, just to watch her search for it. She had written, "I stood in the corridor and looked at the wall. We are going to have to do something different. Not now. Not ready yet. But someday. I told the old Keth we are used to it." That was true. What I did not say. Being used to something does not mean you accept it. It means you have been practicing. Practicing for what? I think I know, but I will not write it yet. Big answers need time to be right. Someday someone will ask how we were so patient. We will tell the truth. We were never patient. We were just busy. Velkath read that line for the 11th time. He had been a diplomat for 220 years. Not cruel, not unusual. Exactly what the system had asked him to be. And the system had asked him to look at a species that smiled and resubmitted and see something small. He had been wrong. The question historians will ask, Velkath wrote, is whether one decision could have changed everything. The answer is yes. The first vote. If we had approved them then, the ledger would not exist. The pulse weapon might still exist, humanity being humanity, but it would not have been used. The corridors would not have gone dark. The colonies would not have been stripped. None of it was necessary. All of it was chosen. He wrote about the chair scraping, the woman in the corridor, the cup left behind with a note about coffee, the particular humanity of leaving something useful for people who had left nothing for them. They were kind not because the galaxy deserved it, he wrote. They were kind because that is the kind of species they decided to be. That decision survived 200 years of our worst. And when the patience ran out, when the kindness stopped being extended outward and turned inward, they did not become cruel. They became clear. There is a difference. He stopped writing. He looked out the window. The new conclave sphere gleamed in the distance, a silver curve against the black. Ships were docking, departing, a galaxy slowly, carefully being better. On the far side of that sphere, in a small room, 23 chairs sat in a circle. On the wall, in every language of every member species, the same words. The first petition was filed in good faith. All that followed was earned. Below it, smaller letters, in memory of Daraven and the 43 ambassadors who came after her, who asked politely until asking politely stopped being enough. Patience held at full pressure for 200 years, reshapes everything it touches. Velkath had visited that room once. He had stood alone in the center of the circle. He had felt the full weight of a small decision. Not a vote for war, not a vote for cruelty. Just a vote, 9 against, 2 abstain, 0 in favor. The most ordinary thing in the world. He had made himself a cup of something not coffee. He had never mastered it, despite Dara's detailed instructions, and watched the ships. The Tessari delegation was arriving today. 6-week approval. First session. He had read their application. It was thorough, correct, filed in the right format. We owe them a better welcome than we gave the last species who filed that, he said aloud to no one. He put down his cup. He picked up his pen. There was still work to do. There was always still work to do. That, at least, had not changed. The Tessari delegation entered the conclave chamber for the first time that afternoon. They were small, furred creatures from a world of perpetual twilight. Their language consisted mostly of hums and clicks. Their application had been filed in triplicate, translated into all 7 major conclave dialects, and accompanied by a handwritten note from Kai Ferrer. Welcome. You belong here. It took too long. We are sorry. Let us do better together. The gallery was full. Observers from a dozen species watched as the Tessari took their seats at the round table. There was no raised platform, no head, no senior end. The chair they sat in had been used before by a breath delegate, then a Jetheri, then a human. The seat was warm. The Tessari delegate, whose name was a series of hums that approximated to quiet stone, looked around the chamber. She saw the plaque on the wall. She read the words. She did not cry. She simply nodded once and opened her folder. The first item on the agenda was a petition from a Category 3 species on the galactic rim. They had been waiting for 11 years. Their application was complete. Their forms were correct. Their languages were translated. Their ambassador, a young woman with a navy jacket and a small pin on her lapel, sat in the gallery. Her hands were folded in her lap, very still. The vote was unanimous. Pen scratching, then silence. Then the sound of a chair, scraping not in protest, not in frustration, but in the ordinary motion of someone standing up to begin. The new ambassador walked to the podium. She opened her folder. She smiled a real smile, not the desperate grimace of someone trying to salvage a disaster, but the calm expression of someone who had already accepted the outcome and was planning her next move. She began to speak. Her voice was steady. Her accent was terrible. She mispronounced every greeting, but she tried. And in the gallery, an old Keth with creased slate-colored hide and eyes too dim for small print sat very still. He listened to her mispronounce his language. He thought of another woman, in another time, standing in a corridor, looking at a wall. He thought of the words she had written, the words he had read 1,000 times. We were never patient. We were just busy. He nodded. He picked up his pen. There was still work to do. There was always still work to do. That, at least, had not changed. And somewhere, in a drawer in a small embassy on the lower ring, a coffee machine sat in the third cabinet. Settings labeled. Help yourself. Thank you for the conversations.